fix the hair. Gotta,
a very nice raglan shirt on.
Yeah, get everything stretched out, get looking good, and we're live. So, I like to make sure that everybody gets to see my little pre-show rituals here. I don't want people to, it's not so much that I want to take away the magic as much as I want people to get a little understanding that I'm human too. I don't want people thinking that I'm just this god up here on this pedestal of fight picking and analysis,
Yeah. Yeah, I like to, that's why I dress down and I look so terrible for all of these. I want it to feel like an intimate setting, like I just crawled out of bed and like I overslept and I'm not really ready to break down the fights. And I want it to have that kind of improvisational feel, you know what I mean? Right. And I, like you drink when I'm throwing to you to talk and we have this whole like, sort of like real awkward rapport between us.
Exactly. I don't want anybody to be intimidated. That's I think the important thing.
Yeah. And I know I would be incredibly intimidating if not for this whole persona I've cultivated. So I have to combat that natural sort of masculine power sort of vibe that I just give off.
Yeah, that's the important part. So on that note, welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection. I'm Zane Simon, as always, joined by my co-host Connor Rebish. And we are here to talk UFC Fight Night, Who the Hell Cares? Starring Michael McDonald and John Lineker. And I don't want to feel like it's Who the Hell Cares because Michael McDonald, John Lineker, and Tony Ferguson, and even my boy Josh Samman, and, Louis Smolka, Ben Nguyen, and other fights like that. Like, there's some good stuff on this card. Mm-hmm. But after last week, it is monumentally difficult to get up for another UFC event right away.
Yeah, the thing with a weekend like that is not only is the lead up draining, but by the end of the weekend, you're almost sick of fights. It's like you watch 3 cards in a row. You don't not love MMA anymore, but you're like, all right, it's time for a week off. You know what I mean?
Well, and even that is just like, you suddenly have this sense of proportion. Like, you've just watched all this effort get pushed into putting together these huge fights with massive names, title fight after title fight after title fight. And now it's like, and some dudes in South Dakota fighting. It's like that proportion, that proportion becomes stark suddenly. Whereas if it's just once every week, you kind of feel like, oh, there's a fight card this week. I can't wait to see it. Not, oh, this is the 4th fight card this week. I really do not care this time around. But after we've done the work, we know who these people are. There are some
genuine gems on this card. Like you said, I think Tony Ferguson not being able to fight Michael Chiesa is a bit of a letdown, but that's still good. Boetsch Samman is a great fight. I think as far as mid-tier heavyweight action go, Omielańczuk, Oliynyk will actually be a lot of fun. And then what you pointed out, Ben Nguyen versus Louis Smolka is a great fight.
It is. That's actually like a really good, solid flyweight.
Also, Katlyn Chookagian, really nice addition to the women's bantamweight division.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not all for naught.
No, it's not all for naught. It's just, it is what it is.
It's a post UFC 200 card.
It is. It's just a little bit of a bring down. It's a little, getting the edge. Maybe this is appropriate too, to just kind of get the edge off and like not give us like an immediate week of reprieve and thought about UFC 200 to like immediately be like, nope, here's your sort of your post-prandial snack, your thin mint.
A wafer thin mint.
A wafer thin mint, that's right. Let's just hope neither of us explodes by the end of this. So the first fight, middleweight bout, Devin Clark versus Alex Nicholson.
Well, Alex Nicholson is the kind of fighter I like. He is a crazy animal with very little clear order to what he does. Are you drinking some kind of like avocado shake there or something, Zane?
It's spinach, almond butter, mango, and Soy milk.
Sounds Northwestern for sure.
It's just like it's the baseline super healthy breakfast kind of thing. It's like the healthiest breakfast I can make myself have every day.
Doesn't sound bad. It doesn't sound bad. I was just thinking avocados actually make a really nice dessert. I don't know why I immediately started craving an avocado milkshake. This is like when we were on the Shirt Dog Round Table and I was just typing stuff to fuck you up while you were trying to talk. You drinking a green sludge out of a glass. I just couldn't help but comment on it.
All right.
Let's see. Alex Nicholson, he came in against Misha Cirkunov. He fought him at light heavyweight, and now he's down to middleweight. So I'm not actually sure if that'll be ideal for him or not. He looked a good size at light heavyweight. He did not look undersized. He's tall and long, and it was a much better division for him, obviously, than heavyweight, although he was pretty successful as a regional heavyweight. We'll see how he looks at middleweight. He's a good kind of test for a fighter like Devin Clark, but in this fight, Devin Clark is the prospect rather than Alex Nicholson. Devin Clark is still fairly young. He is athletic and explosive. He is a exactly what you think of when you think of a wrestling specialist in MMA. He's got a good blast double, reactive takedowns, and very good top control, nice ground and pound and submissions as well. So basically, it's going to be a similar dynamic to the Cirkunov fight. Now, Clark won't have the same physical strength that Cirkunov had. Cirkunov is one of those guys with just sort of feels like being hugged by several pieces of concrete when he tries to take you down. And Clark won't have that because I imagine Nicholson will be substantially larger, and Clark is the right size for the division. But Nicholson's biggest weakness is probably his takedown defense. He is active off of his back. He's active on the feet. He has a crazy fascination with spinning strikes, but he is dangerous. His problem is that he cannot decide where the fight takes place the way a guy like Devin Clark can. And so I think Clark is going to have a stiff test in his hands, but will probably take a decision.
Yeah, the biggest question I have is that Clark tends to be a very wooden striker when he strikes, like chin high, really just kind of puts himself in a lot of danger. And while Nicholson puts himself in a lot of danger too, he's just like, we know he's stupid tough in a brawl. Like he can take a lot of punishment while fighting sloppy. And so I do have a worry that just if Nicholson, because of his raw size, is able to keep Clark from getting a couple of takedowns early, then he would probably have the advantage in a straight brawl.
His takedown defense didn't actually look that bad against Misha Cirkunov. It looked like it had improved, but Clark's takedown style is very different than Cirkunov's. Yeah,
I agree that I think Clark should have the advantage because he's the more technical wrestler and the smoother, more technical, well-rounded fighter in general.
Yeah.
But Nicholson, he's a legit athlete. He played, he was a good, decent basketball player in high school, if by nothing else than his own measuring stick there. But he looks it. He's got a nice reach. He's quick on his feet. He's explosive. If he's able to just be a lot bigger than Clark in the cage as a former heavyweight and light heavyweight and use that power wisely to be a little tentative and wait for the shots to come after him, then he could certainly have an advantage if it's just a power brawl.
Yeah.
So I'm picking Clark too, but this feels very much like a coin flip fight to me just because it's middleweight. We don't know. It's so hard to tell how size and athleticism is going to match up until two guys are actually fighting one another. Mm-hmm. That's like the hardest thing to judge, is just to be like, well, this guy's going to be way faster.
Yeah, Clark is the guy with the upside in this fight, but I agree with you. It's very difficult to know how Nicholson will look at middleweight, to know how his takedown defense will look, and to know how a young, inexperienced guy like Clark, who I think has largely gotten by because of his athleticism, is going to deal with a really durable, really aggressive guy who just continually looks for crazy ways to end you throughout the fight.
Yeah. So Clark is the favorite, -220 to -235. Nicholson, the underdog, +201 to +170. Which I think that's wide. Frankly, I think it should be a plus 150, minus 150 kind of deal. I don't think either guy has done enough to really deserve to be a large favorite in a fight like this, or a large underdog for that matter. Like, these are not deep, impressive records that these guys are coming in with. Is like, oh, he's a blue chip prospect, you know?
No.
So there might be a chance bet on Nicholson there, but frankly, I just think this fight's gonna be a mess, and we won't know until we probably won't know until it's over who won it, until the scores are read, or until somebody chokes somebody out or gets a knockout. It could easily just be like 15 minutes of back and forth sloppy action. That brings us to Matthew Lopez versus Rani Yahya. This is a really weird fight. Like,
Rani Yahya's involved, so
yeah. Because I really like Matthew Lopez's game a lot. Like, I think he's a very, very solid prospect. And Rani Yahya is one of those dudes, like, he's like Gray Maynard without the elite peak. And I don't mean style-wise, because stylistically he's nothing like Gray Maynard.
Sure.
But we're sort of at the, like, how bad can Rani Yahya do? Like, how big a fight, like, how underwhelming a fight can he lose? You know? Because Yahya...
It's a worthy question.
Yahya can be a really good fighter. He can compete at a very high level just with an aggressive positional lockdown jiu-jitsu game. But he can also just give up some terrible fights. Like,
I will say, Rani Yahya has basically only lost to good fighters. The worst guy he's lost to is Tom Ninamaki. And Tom Ninamaki is not bad. He just, like, his style wasn't really cut out for this scene, and he wasn't that athletic, and I think a fight with Yahya was perfect for him for those reasons. But he's typically, Yahya is he's so weirdly crafty. Rani Yahya is a guy who looks like he has never thrown a punch before, and yet he's still managed to, at times, outstrike Masanori Kanehara, which is very weird. He's a guy who gasses in every single fight and still manages to bank early rounds just by being this smothering machine. I also think it's worth asking, and I'm sorry that I'm interrupting your thing here, but I think it's worth asking why or how Rani Yahya's style will work in this day and age of MMA scoring. Because I think we saw over the course of the last weekend how much the scoring in this sport has kind of turned over a new leaf almost overnight. We've seen signs of it for the past few months, but like two judges... all three judges gave Joanna Jędrzejczyk a 10-8 round in her fight. One judge gave her two 10-8 rounds. We're seeing a lot of fights like that where Miesha Tate got a 10-8 round in the second round of her fight with Holly Holm. You know, a lot of judges are scoring that way now, and also scoring based on damage rather than positional control. And like, I think today, which is fine. Yeah, I think today, like we saw Derek Lewis, Roy Nelson, perfect example of that.
Yeah.
I think today, Rani Yahya would have lost his last fight to Masanori Kanehara. Because he did nothing but hold on to his hips against the fence, Johnny Hendricks style.
Yep.
So I just think, please go on.
So yeah, I mean, the thing here is that I think that Lopez is a considerably better striker than Rani Yahya. And, he looks like he's got good power. He looks like his striking meshes well with a good wrestling game, and that he's got a natural grappling game going, and that he can be a really great fighter down the line. But this is getting thrown in like way into the deep end against a very experienced opponent who may not offer a lot of offense other than control. So, like, I kind of feel like I have to pick Yahya in the like old scoring mindset of like, well, he's probably going to out grapple him and make this fight just an ugly slog. But I think the fight is there for Lopez to steal if he can put together enough solid offense in flashes. If he can do enough, if he can do enough with the opportunities he gets, then maybe the new judging criteria will favor him. But I still just, it's a weird, hard fight for him to win. Like, this is a very difficult fight to pick a kid like him to come in and just blow the doors off.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Gray Maynard route and pick against Yahya here. I think Matthew Lopez's aggression and pace are going to be really tough for Yahya. I think it's very likely that Yahya takes the first round, as he so often does. But Yahya has, the last guy he submitted was Johnny Bedford, not good on the ground, and then Josh Grisby, who has his flaws as well. He hasn't submitted a very good like submission specialist in some time. In fact, when he fights those guys, it's like Tom Yanamaki or like Chad Mendez or Joseph Benavidez. He loses those fights when it's guys who are equally good on the ground. Matthew Lopez is not that experienced yet, but he has shown some really great scrambling and ground skills. And the biggest problem for Yahya is his stamina. He puts everything into that first round. He's a guy who's probably perfectly suited to like a 9-minute black belt grappling match. But here in MMA, after the 9th minute, he's dead. And I think that's when Matthew Lopez is going to take over. I would not be surprised to see him TKO Yahya late, even though Yahya is very tough, maybe ground strikes or something like that. Or the thing with Lopez, too, is he's just as aggressive on the feet as he is on the ground. That aggression is less justified on the feet because he's kind of sloppy as a striker still, but Yahya's no peach himself when it comes to kickboxing technique, even though he is weirdly effective because he has some strange Yahya mystique about him. But I'm going to go with Matthew Lopez.
Yeah, I think the other part of this that makes me a little wary about picking Lopez is just that, like, the most inexperienced person he lost to in any recent fight is probably Chase Beebe for the WEC title back in 2007. Like,
yeah, he tends to beat
then the people who beat him are all like hardened, longtime veterans, and it's just so. Like I say, I don't like a fight like this because it's so hard to know how does Matthew Lopez's how do his skills translate off the regionals straight into the UFC? How does he look in his debut? I really want him to win this fight because
it's a very different class of opponent. I mean, it's the step up that we haven't seen from Matt Lopez yet. So
Yahya is like a fun suck. Like, he just
he may very well, like, he's the kind of guy who I think he probably beats inexperienced guys because he's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, you really go in there and he doesn't want to fight you. He doesn't want to give you a chance. He doesn't want to have a fair exchange. He wants to grab your legs and drag you down and pin you against the fence and mount you or get to your back if he can. But mostly he is totally determined to apply his game. And he doesn't care about setting up takedowns. So, like, for these young guys who aren't really very crafty with their counters and stuff like that, he doesn't need clever setups. He just dives on their legs over and over and over again. And then when they think he's going to dive, he throws like 3 really awkward punches and lands every one. And then he just goes back to diving on your legs. So I can see it. And Yahya as an underdog does have me a little worried.
Yeah. All right. So Yahya is the underdog here, which is also weird to me. Minus 105 to plus 118. Matthew Lopez, the favorite, minus 115 to minus 140. It should be clear, I like Matthew Lopez a lot. I think he's a great prospect and a great addition. I think he's going to do really well down the line. I think he's got a really nice, complete MMA game he's working on. But this is just a really tough fight. It's, it's a dude who does not get finished and who beats everyone but really experienced, well-rounded, seasoned veterans. Mm-hmm. And you're not, this isn't that. So,
and he's not quite Gray Maynard yet. I mean, he's on a 2-fight winning streak.
He hasn't been knocked out a ton. He hasn't. It's just that idea of like, is he about to get the worst loss of his career? That's the question. And I picked Maynard, so I got to pick Yahya.
You were right about Maynard too. Gray Maynard, boy, was that a horribly ugly fight.
That was such an ugly fight, man. I loved it, but it was hilarious. Fernando Bruno was not ready.
he went ham though. You can say that for him.
He did. I think that it was one of those things though where you could see him like charging out, like guns blazing, gonna throw everything, and he didn't knock him out. And he's just like, "Well, shit, what do I do now?"
It's over. I knew my only path was to do what everyone else does and knock Gray Maynard lights out, and so now I'm just gonna get out wrestled.
Yeah. All right, that's the end of the Fight Pass card. Brings us to the first FS1 fight: Scott Holtzman versus Cody Pfister. Yeah, take it away.
I think this is actually a fairly interesting fight. I'm into this one. Cody Pfister, both these guys basically have just lost to, well, prospects. Drew Dober is not really a prospect, but Drew Dober is back sort of on the prospect path because he's now training at Elevation. And looked much, much better against Scott Holtzman. Really overwhelmed the young, inexperienced guy. And Cody Pfister is sort of young and a little more experienced than Holtzman, but still pretty inexperienced. And he just had his big loss to Sage Northcutt in a weird fight. So we basically have two guys here who need to get back on track. And I think I like Cody Pfister. I have a fondness for him. He's just a very sort of like rugged, rough and tumble kind of fighter. He will come after you. He's more aggressive than he is clean. Although I think working with Stephen Wright and Johnny Hendricks' team, he'll probably pick up a little more technique and do better. His fitness has certainly improved. If you've seen the pictures that Stephen Wright was posting of him on Twitter, he is shredded. He looks like in very, very good shape, which is not what he looked like in his UFC debut. He looks a lot more like Sage Northcutt now. But Pfister, too, like he had a lot of things in that Northcutt fight that worried me. He really got what success he had off of aggression, of kind of throwing the young, inexperienced fighter off and coming after him. And then on the ground, he kept reaching back, trying to open the guard with one hand and exposing himself to triangles, and he was getting swept and taken down. It's just not a ton of technical finesse to what Cody Pfister does. And Scott Holtzman isn't quite there yet either, but I think he's closer than Pfister, and I think he's a lot more athletic too. Just naturally more explosive, stronger, faster. Those things are in his advantage. I could see Pfister doing some of what Dober did, grinding Holtzman, overwhelming him a little bit in the early going. But even in that fight, Holtzman was still landing good shots till the final bell. He was still landing hard elbows in the clinch. He was still going after Dober with kicks and punches and still trying to take him down. I think he can match Pfister's relentlessness, and I think he has the athletic advantage and a little more technical polish that should carry him. So I got Holtzman by probably a late submission.
Yeah, I think the difference here is that Holtzman, to me, strikes me as a natural fighter who is learning how to fight to his natural instincts, like somebody who really gets and understands how to fight well and is then having to learn all the technical game with it. And Cody Pfister is the guy who is trying as hard as he possibly can all the time to learn how to fight and just has no instinctual ability for it whatsoever. Yeah.
Which is why it was such a good narrative going into his fight with Northcutt. Holtzman's kind of like Northcutt, like this natural, except Holtzman is better trained than Northcutt.
He's also 10 years older and,
But only 4 years deep into his career, he's still learning,
Yeah, I'm not saying that he shouldn't be more advanced than Northcutt. That's what I'm saying is that like he should still be learning and picking things up. I do think fighters do that regardless of when they start for the first few years of their career. But a 32-year-old tends to usually have a much better idea of how to work and how to do like what they need to do and what they need to work on than a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
So he should be better trained.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it it is hard for me to pick Pfister. Just I don't know. This is exactly the kind of fights he's tended to lose throughout his career, other than beating James Muntasri, who is himself just kind of a grab bag of mediocre technical tricks and a flashy athlete and doesn't necessarily seem to doesn't necessarily seem to get fighting as well as he, as much as he tries.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's getting beat by Yosdenis Cedeno and, Tim Means and Derek Campos and any half decent athlete who comes along.
He beat Cedeno.
Oh, he beat Cedeno. That's right. So he got beat by James Montazeri. That's right. I'm looking at this backwards. But
you're fine.
He got beat by James Montazeri, beating Yosdenis Cedeno. Yosdenis Cedeno's. I hate Yosdenis Cedeno for a whole other reason. Like, very few fighters look as good in training footage and then as bad in the cage as Yosdenis Cedeno.
Mm.
Anyway, point being, Holtzman is the kind of powerful, collected athlete that tends to beat Cody Pfister. It would be nice to think that his new training camp has immediately turned things around for him, but that's not how it tends to work. Like, usually going to a new camp, it takes a couple of years to really, like a year maybe, to really see the results.
I think he did train there for the Northcutt fight. So he's at least been there. He's at least been there for, since like November or October of last year.
Okay, so maybe it'll pay dividends. Maybe I'm talking out my ass, but I just don't see the athletic side for Cody Pfister. He kind of has a cut rate John Fitch vibe, like John Fitch, who never wrestled all through college and was captain of his wrestling team.
Yeah.
Like, if you took away all the wrestling from John Fitch's game, you would have Cody Pfister.
He's a younger John Fitch who just finished college and spent the whole time playing Halo.
Exactly.
It's not quite the same vibe, but he does have that energy, that hardworking energy. He's the kind of guy who I think could make improvements. I would love to see Cody Pfister come out here and look good.
He's got that incredibly dogged toughness and work ethic to him. Like, I think this guy, like, he seems like a dude who is always trying to become a better fighter all the time, and is going to be working as hard as he can. But he seems like the kind of dude that, like, there's a story. This is a bit of a diversion about Randy Savage, who, when he was trying to become a Major League Baseball player, and he had like really terrible bat speed, and he was a big power slugging outfielder. Just didn't have the basic tools to become a great baseball player. But he was at a training camp for a team. And they saw him, and he was out there, like, after training camp, like, throwing balls from the outfield into a trash can in the infield with his left hand, like, doing it with his non-throwing hand. And, the guy's like, why are you doing this? He's like, well, I thought it'd be a good skill to learn, like, make me more valuable. And you think about it, it's like, you wear a glove on one hand and then you throw with your throwing hand. Like, baseball has no use for that kind of ambidextrous throwing arm at all. It's not a part of the game in any way. And you're spending all this time working on it. And that kind of seems like the kind of person that Cody Pfister might be. Like, he's incredibly dedicated and hardworking, but if he, like, got in his head some completely wrong idea about how to train, he would do that for hours.
Yeah. Like, Cody Pfister is the guy who goes home after training at the gym and, like, goes through 10 rounds on the bag in his garage trying to work out whatever thing his coach told him to do. But I think that's both a blessing and a curse. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has a drive. He has this dogged attitude that can make him really effective. Or I have a lot of faith in Stephen Wright's abilities as a trainer. I think he worked wonders with Johnny.
Training, that can do wonders.
He worked wonders with Johnny Hendricks before Hendricks' precipitous decline began, and I don't think Stephen Wright had anything to do with that. So, I think it could be good. I'm not sure who their wrestling and grappling coaches are out there, but if, Stephen Wright worked with Team Takedown, he's worked with good people before, you just don't know. And so going on what we know from the past, Holtzman, you have to pick Holtzman in this fight.
Yeah, just for the wrestling, or just for the power advantage and the athleticism. And he showed with Dober that, I think probably the Dober fight, if anything, probably exposed to him just how much he needs to work on his wrestling. And I would expect him to have spent some real time dedicated to stuffing takedowns off of that fight. Mm-hmm. So odds on this fight are still way too wide Scott Holtzman is at minus 302 to minus 320 or 350. Pfister plus 274 down to plus 240. Once again, like the Nicholson-Clark fight, neither of these guys have done near enough in their MMA career to inspire any kind of blind faith in them as having this fight on lock. There's no reason at all that Cody Pfister can't jump on Scott Holtzman's back in round 1 and choke him unconscious. Like, Holtzman is not any kind of technical miracle anywhere and has never shown, like, he's shown himself to be a consistent power brawler and he's got good instincts, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything. Cody Pfister is tough as nails. Like, Pfister is really tough and hard to put away and aggressive. So those odds feel really wide to me. I don't see it.
Me neither.
All right, that brings us to Courtney Casey versus Cristina Stanciu. Let's see. Am I starting this? Yeah, I am. Man, I would love to see Stanciu win this fight because she is just like this ridiculous ball of energy and potential fist violence.
Yeah.
And I would I think it would be totally awesome to see her make the technical jumps to put Courtney Casey away. 'Cause I like Courtney Casey. This is nothing against Courtney Casey. She's a good athlete. She's exactly the kind of prospect the UFC wants, which is a big, powerful athlete that can build a whole bunch of skills on top of that frame to become a really competitive high-level fighter. Stanciu is just sort of this like weird throwback MMA cul-de-sac of she's the kind of thing that you get out of Europe, which is these really weird, like technical little areas that can be really effective or just complete trash. And I would love to see Stanciu be really effective because she throws everything from the hip. She's got some decent boxing technique when she actually wants to apply it. And she fights at a pace that no human being could keep up for more than 3 minutes. But I got to pick Casey. I think Casey is big enough and tough enough to weather and then can grind out a win.
Yeah, I actually was emboldened by Stanciu's debut fight against Marina Moroz. I expected her to look worse than she did. Thought that fight was really close. And not only did she have her like swarming thing in the first round, which is basically up to that point all we'd seen from her. Every single one of her fights except for one decision in her sophomore effort were first round finishes, most of them very quick first round finishes. I kind of thought that's all she had was that crazy Wanderlei Silva blitz. And then she got tired, and then she looked bad, and then she kind of got her second wind, and then she looked okay. She had some nice kicking from distance. She had some good counters. She was pretty patient. She at least showed that she knows how to fight tired and that she has the capability to fight a smart fight, against a tough opponent who won't go away early. And she even stopped jumping guard and jumping for guillotines and stuff in the last round of the fight. And that's the kind of thing that really worries me about Courtney Casey. Courtney Casey she's 29. She has been fighting for how long? Let's see. Not very long. Not very long. Nor has Stanciu.
I will say too, I thought Courtney Casey for some reason was bigger than Cristina Stanciu, but apparently she's only 5'2", so she's tiny. That may come into play.
She's actually shorter. I didn't expect that either. She's thick. I mean, even without a height advantage, she's a big girl. She's very powerfully built. But I think Courtney Casey, I just don't see her getting over her questionable decision making. I haven't seen that yet, where she's going to be this fighter who has a golden opportunity and hurts Joanne Calderwood and then immediately jumps for guard and uses that tactic for the rest of the fight. It's like, what? Just keep punching her, please. And she just won't do it. And Stanciu showed the ability to adapt. She did jump guard. She went for leg locks and stuff like that. But not only was she close on some of them, closer than Casey was in any of her submission attempts, she showed she has some real craft off of her back. She stopped doing it in round 3. Round 3, Morose went for a takedown. Stanciu had a front headlock, and she decided to shuck her aside and take top position instead, so she can adjust. And she didn't rely on that tactic. I think Stanciu has more upside. She may still be going out there and trying to blitz, but that's kind of all the success that Casey has had as well. So we may have, I think most likely we have a crazy brawl in this fight for the first couple minutes, and then it cools down, and Stanciu just has the cooler head and the better, more complete game for a distance battle between two very tired women.
Man, that feels wrong. Maybe that's true, but the image of Stanciu is like the cooler head in any fight just feels so wrong.
But I mean, basically, the reason we didn't expect that is because all of her fights, she went out there and went insane, and we're like, "There's no way she can match this pace for the rest of the fight." She can't, but at least against Morose, she showed that she knows that. She didn't try to keep going back to it. She had a few blitzes. She countered Morose when she came in, and she kicked her. I thought that fight was really close. It was by no means an easy walkover victory for Marina Morose. She came close to losing that fight on rounds, based on what judges she had.
Yeah, you might sway me here. My mental image of Casey maybe is a better prospect than she really is. Like, the problem is that both these fighters have been fighting for so little time that you could expect either of them to make big leaps.
True.
And part of me too just does not expect big leaps out of a fighter working out of Romania.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I expect big leaps from a fighter working out of Freak Animal Fitness.
Yeah, I know. There's
the only notable fighter on the roster. On the team like that, nobody else trains from there. You can say that about Stanciu too, but I don't know.
Tough.
It's not an easy fight to call.
I'm sticking with my Casey pick until I just have the feeling that her first 2 losses are going to have done more for her to get her to adjust. And I feel like Stanciu could maybe roll off that first loss and be like, it's my debut. She got lucky. I'm going to go out there and I can just do the same thing again and she'll lose again. I don't have the trust that I think she did all right in that fight to adjust to a fight that she was losing, but she still ended up losing it. And I don't know. I feel like Casey's going to come in better prepared and just... I've seen what seems like at least the beginnings of her being a little bit cleaner of an athlete, just like a better put together athlete, a better trained athlete. Maybe not technically trained, but I mean like fitter. Like she just looks like she is in better shape and working.
She's a physical beast for this division. Yeah. She's very strong. She's fit too. Like she has stamina to go with her strength. She hasn't really gasped badly in any fights that I can recall.
Yeah, and I feel like I can trust that a little more to stay with her and help her win rounds than I trust Stanciu, who still has this style that, like, she can kind of mitigate her style, but it's still very bad for winning fights. So... not a clean pick, but I'm sticking with Casey. You've almost swayed me, but either way, the odds on this fight, Stanciu is the favorite -152 to -160. Casey, the underdog, +125 to +138. I'm fine with that. That feels okay. Stanciu, it should basically be a coin flip. They're both decent athletes with bad styles who are not winning in the UFC yet. So
anything within the 150, 160 range, I say feels at least understandable.
Yeah, definitely. And that brings us to Eric Spicely versus Sam Alvey.
Middleweights. You know how I feel about this one, Zane.
Yes, it's it is a BJJ guy with questionable gas tank against blue collar scrapper matchup for the ages.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That they fit into the archetypes perfectly. I think Eric Spicely has a hell of a story, man. Do you know his backstory?
I don't, actually.
He lived with his grandmother until she died because his parents were drug addicts, and then he moved back in with them, and they were abusive and spent all of their time getting high. And so he left home when he was 15, and has basically been fighting ever since. and doing jiu-jitsu, and his girlfriend died during one of his training camps for one of his fights. Like, the dude has been through a ton of misfortune, a ridiculous amount. So it made it sadder to watch him get blown up by Andrew Sanchez on The Ultimate Fighter, seeing that. But the thing is he went into that as a middleweight, and he's still fighting as a middleweight. And he was kind of fat on The Ultimate Fighter. He wasn't like obese, but the dude is a former welterweight, and he definitely carries more than enough extra weight at middleweight to be able to go back down. And Sam Alvey is not a super athlete.
Well, that was at light heavyweight though on the show.
Okay, even then, I think he was fought as a welterweight before, and he was very lean.
That could be. I'll check while you're talking. But talk.
So now he's fighting Sam Alvey, and Alvey is not a super athlete. We've talked about that in the past, but he's also experienced and a good defensive wrestler, and he's pretty big. You know, his frame is pretty large. He's not a small guy. And so, are you not seeing any welterweight stuff there?
Oh yeah, he started his career at welterweight, but he's fought up at middleweight since 2014.
Okay,
so yeah, he started there, but fought as high as 200 pounds in 2015. So
I kind of get
all over the place.
I kind of get the sense from Spicely that he's fighting at middleweight because it's easier than fighting at welterweight, rather than because it's the best division for him. Seeing the shape that he came in on The Ultimate Fighter, where he came in just really kind of chubby, not looking like much of an athlete, that gives me the impression that he's just not concerned with size advantages, because he has been this really crafty submission artist who on the regional circuit has been able to outskill everyone. I think he said that in the first episode of The Ultimate Fighter. He fought some big muscle-bound Danish guy or something like that, and he was like, hey, the guy looked at the party, had tattoos, but abs don't win you fights. But at a certain point, athleticism does win you fights. And what Sam Alvey doesn't have in athleticism, he makes up for in size and power and defensive wrestling. Spicely to me is kind of like Yahya. He's going to go for takedowns. If he doesn't get those, he's pretty much lost. And Sam Alvey has beaten some good grapplers. Those are not really the guys that trouble him. The guys that trouble him are methodical volume strikers. And kickers.
Who can pick him apart, who can make up for his incredibly plodding power one punch style. It's
people who move around him and don't open themselves up while still scoring points, because Alvey is purely a counter fighter. We saw that in his fight with Teodoru. We saw it in his fight with Tom Watson. He has a ton of trouble getting going if you don't lead and open yourself up. But if you're Daniel Kelly or Cesar Ferreira or Dylan Andrews and you lunge in at him, you are going to get clipped with something. And it's going to hurt because the guy packs power and he's got good timing on those punches. And so I just don't see how Eric Spicely beats him. Like, Sam Alvey has beaten Gerald Mearshart. He's beaten who else? He's beaten some good grapplers throughout his career.
I was supposed to be on Sam Alvey prep.
No, you're fine. I mean, he knocked out Daniel Kelly, but he didn't really have to grapple with him. Cesar Ferreira, I suppose, counts. Cesar Ferreira's got a pretty solid takedown game and good grappling.
Carl Amasu's been a pretty good grappler over career.
Yeah, there we go. So he's beaten some guys with good grappling chops. More experienced grapplers than Spicely. And that's really all Spicely has. So I think Sam Alvey wins this fight.
Yeah, this is definitely like there's a chance that Spicely can just come out and immediately out wrestle Sam Alvey, put him on his back, and grind out a win or even find a submission, although I don't think Alvey's ever been particularly submittable.
He's been submitted once.
Yeah, he's been submitted once in 2010 and has not
by Gerald Mearshart, who he then avenged.
And has not been submitted since.
Yeah.
So Alvey, the best path to beating Alvey does not tend to be through submitting him. And if he hasn't been submitted, it's really just, it's hard to see Spicely having long-term success. Like, does he just hold him down for 3 rounds and be able to do that over and over again? So either he lands a kind of not miracle, but either he lands the early takedown, gets the early submission, or some point he makes a mistake. Some point he gets tired. Some point his shots are sloppy, and he gets knocked out. And
or even just loses a really ugly decision.
Yeah.
Like
or he realizes that he cannot make any effective offense happen, and he does the Elias Theodorou thing, but without the kicking game.
Yes, exactly.
So that is also very possible. I'm going to pick Alvey by knockout in the second round. That feels like
That's
right answer.
My exact pick, Zane. We totally agree.
Alvey is a sizable favorite here, -250 to -265. Spicely, the underdog, +231 to +200. I don't have any big problem with those odds at all.
Alvey by KO is -105. That's maybe something worth considering.
Maybe, but Alvey, because he's such a counter puncher and so inactive, there is really a good chance that this just becomes an ugly decision.
There's a distinct chance that Spicely's response to Alvey's takedown defense and counters is to just completely shut down and let Alvey be the one, somehow let Sam Alvey outstrike him at range.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the other part of this too, is that I don't think Sam Alvey should be a way bigger favorite than that, because there is a chance that Alvey just gets when Theodorou pushed him up against the cage in that fight, I honestly feel like, people were like, oh, Elias fought a safe fight and all that. Alvey did not take 1/10 of the opportunities he had in that fight to create offense.
Yep.
He had so many opportunities where all he did was just sit, up against the fence, just held him there, or just laid against the fence and did nothing.
Well, we forget about it because of his knockouts, but that was basically how he was fighting in all three of the fights that he won by knockout. That little streak he put together in the UFC, especially against Cesar Ferreira. Ferreira was pretty much outstriking him at the point that Alvey knocked him out. He was outlanding him because Alvey was waiting for that one counterpunch opportunity.
Yeah, he literally only fights by throwing his right hand as a counter. That is the only way he fights. Everything else is not happening. So you cannot really bank on Alvey being a bigger favorite.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Given that. And that brings us to Lauren Murphy versus Katlyn Chookagian. And I'm really glad that they picked up Chookagian. I think that she's a good addition. She's got a long striking background, and she's put together a decent scrappy run outside the UFC. She's obviously, she's apparently worked a lot on jiu-jitsu as well. I do not think she wins this fight. I think that the plan to beat her is really simple and is basically how Lauren Murphy tends to fight. I think my only big question mark is, will Murphy be willing to dedicate herself to takedowns early? Because if she's not, in her last fight, it took her 2.5 rounds to finally hit a takedown. And then she dominated completely. If she does that here, she could really get beat up. The only reason I'm not more willing to believe that that's absolutely going to happen is that Chookagian is a very slow starter who is very willing to get hit a lot as she goes on, and who tends to become better as the fight goes on. As she starts getting hit, her game starts to get slicker. She starts to pay more attention to her defense. She starts to put together better combinations. But early in fights, she can just very much be pushed back and blasted with shots and hurt and hit a lot. And I think that will give Murphy the time she needs to get comfortable in the fight and find her takedown game and to work her over from top control, where I think on the ground she can. I think she's too powerful in top control to be caught up in Chookagian's grappling from the bottom. So I'm picking Murphy here, but If Murphy does not find her takedown game at all, there's a very good chance that Murphy wins early and gets beat up late.
Yeah, I think that lack of takedown game is part of why I'm picking Katlyn Chookagian here. I think Lauren Murphy is a dedicated gatekeeper at this point. We pretty much know that she's not going to beat the elite of the division. She had a couple of tough losses. Now, some of which, like the one against Sarah McMahon, ones that arguably she could have won, she's always a tough out. And that is what makes her difficult. But she had a pretty tough time in the early going with Kelly Fashholtz, who was on a short notice replacement, who is, I think, probably not as good a takedown defender as Chookagian, and who is not as good on the ground as Chookagian. Chookagian's jiu-jitsu in her fight with the similarly undefeated Isabelle Varela was pretty solid. When Varela would go for takedowns and she sprawled, she could take her back. She doesn't have any submissions recently, but she has good positional game on the ground, and and is mean in the clinch. She can punish you for going for those takedowns. I think if Lauren Murphy doesn't take Chookagian down, then she's going to lose this fight. I really think that's what it is. Chookagian may be somewhat susceptible defensively, but this is Lauren Murphy we're talking about here. Lauren Murphy gets hit by every single committed shot her opponent throws. She is very, very hittable. She gets her feet out of position. She commits both hands, doesn't keep one at home to block or parry, and doesn't seem to have any sense of rhythm changes to her striking. It's just like Lauren Murphy is like a Bren gun, like a slow, methodical machine gun fire. Just ching, 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 ching. There's no change-ups whatsoever. And so you don't even have to know what she's going to throw because she does have variety. All you have to do is be able to time her. You know her head's going to be there, and you can hit her. I think that's that's the thing that Chookagian's going to be able to pick up on. She's a pretty precise striker. She has definitely the sharper striking, even if she's not a knockout artist. So, yeah, I don't know. That Fashholtz fight, it was great to see Murphy finally get a UFC win, but it didn't really inspire me as to Murphy's game against a long striker who throws straight punches and moves well. And Chookagian's got a full camp behind her here, so.
It's true. I mean, there's a very good chance that Chookagian wins this. It's just that I think my problem is just that she starts so slow and tends to start so poorly. Like Chookagian, it looks really bad in the first round. Even against much worse strikers, she gets hit a lot and hard. And Murphy is not she is not always a great, her slow starting problem tends to be more that early in fights, she just strikes. Rather than early in fights, she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think she's kind of like Kat Zingano in the Ronda Rousey fight. She makes up for the fact that she really is a slow starter by just going nuts in the early going.
Exactly, and so I feel like Murphy can overwhelm her early, and then I don't know that the level of fighter that Chookagian's been taking on. I don't know that I trust her to rally back late against somebody bigger and tougher and more powerful, because that's the other thing is that Chookagian was fighting at 125 regionally. True. So she's moving up against bigger, more powerful opponents, and I don't know that I trust necessarily her takedown defense to
that's a good point.
Travel up with her. And so I just think that Murphy's going to overwhelm her physically early, and then late, if she can hit her takedown game, she can really beat Chookagian up. And if she doesn't, then we could get into one of those the first round went one way, the third round very clearly went another way, and the middle round is going to be this mess that we have to decipher for judging. So
sounds about right to me.
Yeah, we will see either way. The odds on this fight, Chookagian is the underdog, plus 169 to plus 140. Murphy, the favorite, minus 170 down to minus 200. I think those are long, frankly. I like Lauren Murphy. She's pretty cool. She's a good person, but she does not inspire much confidence. And this should be much more like plus 115, minus 115, dead even odds or close to it.
Lauren Murphy's the kind of fighter that you basically never bet as a favorite. Like, you always bet Lauren Murphy as a big underdog because she's always going to bring it, but you never bet her as a favorite because she's not like an athletic, natural fighter in the way that you would want to, in the way you want her to be. Is that a dog in the background or a cannon going off?
That's my dog.
It's a very deep bark that she has.
She does. She has a very deep bark. She's kind of terrifying in that way. That's the end of the prelim card. That brings us to the Fox Sports 1 main card, opening with Louis Smolka versus Ben Nguyen.
Love this fight. I think this is easily among the best fights on the card, if not the second best after the main event. Louis Smolka has kind of quietly put together a really respectable win streak in this division. He came in, he had that big first fight. Who did he beat? Alptekinos
Yep.
UFC debut, and then he lost to Chris Carriaso, and then he kind of a messy fight with Richie Vasulik, and it was like, all right, maybe he's not as good as he looked in that debut. Maybe it's because all of us were duped into thinking that Alptekinos was something special, and he wasn't necessarily. Yeah. But then beating Neil Seery, Patrick Holohan, Smolka seems like he's starting to put together a pretty good game. I think he is no longer of the impression that he should be out there striking with people for very long. He seems to know that he is a grappling specialist who uses his height in the clinch to beat you up and drag you off your feet and then works you on the ground. And beating guys like Seery and Holohan in that kind of fight is impressive. It really deserves a lot of credit. And I think that makes him a tough matchup for Ben Nguyen, but I also think the fact that we know how weak Louis Smolka is as a striker gives Ben Nguyen a lot of openings. Smolka, he's the kind of guy who you looking at him, he inspires a lot of confidence. You're like, oh, really tall, long, rangy guy. And then he just doesn't really know how to fight long. He's not even that good with fighting tall. He's not that great defensively. He can be overpowered. He's just kind of a walking liability on the feet. And he will throw weird stuff out there and be unpredictable, but that's really kind of a Band-Aid for a striking style that's not that functional. And Ben Nguyen's striking is more than functional. It's very, very effective. He moves his head, he fights out of both stances, and he throws in huge quantities. And I think that gives him the edge over Louis Smolka. I can absolutely see Smolka dragging him down and submitting him. Nguyen has had problems on the ground in the past, but it was a long time ago. Since then, I think he's looked really, really solid in the scrambles. The way he responded when Oz tried to get him down was pretty fantastic. Not even just sprawling, but actually countering him and then hitting him after stuffing the takedown and then just putting his strikes together, closing the distance and not letting up. I think that gives Nguyen the advantage. And so I think my pick is probably Smolka's tough, so probably Ben Nguyen by unanimous decision.
Yeah, this is tough for me because partially Nguyen has looked much better, much better, more well-rounded. Partially, he's also just won his last two fights in the first round by knockout or by finish, and it really sort of colors it colors perception a bit of like, oh, he must have improved a ton everywhere because he looks so dominant in these last two fights, especially over Ryan Benoit, who I really, I expected that to be a much closer fight.
Two guys who have kind of proven to be busts, Benoit and Oz.
And that, Smolka, the thing with him is that what I've really seen out of him, in his Holohan and Seery fights, obviously both Holohan and Seery are somewhat lesser athletes than what Smolka looks like he's been. Like, Seery is an incredibly dogged, tough, aggressive, every fighter's favorite fighter kind of dude, but he's not a world-beating athlete. He's just super tough and, all those things. And Holohan is kind of the athletic bottom end of flyweight. Like, I feel bad for saying that, but
Well, plus striking by John Kavanagh, a guy who isn't Conor McGregor. Holohan basically has he basically has Cathal Pendred's striking game on a much faster frame.
Yeah.
So he couldn't really press that area against Smolka.
So the tough part there, of course, is that it becomes a little bit difficult to judge just where Smolka's athletic ceiling is. Because, like, unlike Nguyen, who, I'll say what you want about Oleksiy and Benoit as prospects or as fighters or whatever, they're both really good athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They're both really powerful, muscular, fast athletes in the division. And so Smolka's they're both fighters are in this weird place, because the big thing I like about Smolka is that he's showed in those fights, even though the athletic competition may not have been as elite, his wrestling game has become remarkably dominant. Like, Louis Smolka's wrestling game is really good for the flyweight division. Like, a marked improvement above most. He can hit takedowns from crazy angles. He really, holds control well while searching for submissions. He's not just giving up position. And at flyweight, that is almost impossible to do. Everybody gives up position at flyweight. You basically have Demetrius Johnson at the top, and then a whole division full of guys who can take you down pretty well, but can't hold you there very well. So I'm really impressed by a lot of what Smolka's doing there. But now, this is kind of a crossroads for both of them. Like, Nguyen is suddenly fighting somebody who, unlike Benoit and Oleksiy, can exploit some of the weaker parts of his game and who can do it consistently and well. And Smolka is facing somebody who's going to be aggressive and go after him like Syrian Holohan will, but who's a much more powerful athlete, a much better, more dangerous finisher than Holohan or Siri. And I don't know, that makes it tough for me to bet. I think the big thing for me, I'm kind of going with Smolka here, just because Nguyen has lost a lot of crappy fights. Like, yeah, coming up, he lost some really piss poor fights. Chavlit Sityotong, like Josh Phillips. These are not like names that inspire continued greatness. And not just losses, but knockout losses.
Yeah, but also that Sityotong fight, that was at featherweight.
Yeah, I realize, but it's still, we look at a lot of great prospects coming up, and they don't tend to lose that often. They might lose a couple fights here and there. Most of them, it's kind of, let me put it this way: John Dodson lost a lot regionally. And then it really felt like, he found Greg Jackson, and they really put together his game, made him fight calmer and fight more completely. Maybe he started with Jackson. I don't know if he did. I have to assume he didn't. But either way, over the course of his career with a great camp, John Dodson became this much more collected fighter than he was regionally. Same thing for a little while, barely, with who's the crazy Brazilian who fought out of Jackson Wink?
Diego Brando.
Diego Brando.
The neck stabber.
The
old pistol whipper himself.
Ben Nguyen is fighting out of Brisbane, Australia. I don't know. I don't have faith that his camp is going to make him a much better, more prepared fighter than wherever he's at. So I kind of got to pick Smolka here. It seems like he's been making leaps every time out. He's got this really good, solid technical wrestling sub game. Nguyen could absolutely crack him. If Nguyen can stuff a couple takedowns and be the better athlete, then he's got true power. He's got some slick boxing. I absolutely trust him to get it done and finish Smolka, but I'm picking Smolka to take him down, overwhelm him, and choke him out.
Yeah, I actually think that even though I picked Nguyen, I think Smolka should be the favorite in this fight, just because I'm kind of going on a hunch saying that Nguyen's takedown defense and scrambling is going to be good enough to contend with the wrestling of Smolka, because we have yet to see him do that against a wrestler of this caliber. It's kind of like going in there and picking in Jacek over Esparza. You're like, and she ended up destroying her. But beforehand, most of us were like, well, that's a different kind of wrestling. And it's the same case here for Nguyen.
So the odds on this, Smolka is the underdog, -115 to +108. When the favorite, -115 to -125. They are -130, close to dead even. I do agree. I think Smolka should be the slight favorite. He's certainly proven himself much better at the UFC level than Nguyen has. But it's tough. Like, it's two guys who are approaching winning streaks for completely opposite reasons. Nguyen doing it as a power finishing striker, and Smolka doing it as a smothering, controlling grappler wrestler. And neither guy has faced somebody exactly like them recently. So it makes a really interesting fight to see where they're at right now. Oh, crap. Okay. Sorry. That brings us to our next fight.
Do you want me to take it? Do you need to do something?
No, I got it. Welterweight's Kyle Noke versus Keita Nakamura. Sorry, there's just all sorts of other stuff going on. And let's see, who starts here? I've lost track of everything.
I'm not sure. You've got me so curious to know what's happening outside the frame.
No, nothing. Nothing to know about. Locked doors, people outside of them.
I see.
All
Okay.
sorts of mysteries. Kyle Noke versus Keita Nakamura is coming next, and I'll just start this off.
I think it's you. Yeah.
This should absolutely be Kyle Noke's fight. Just like oh god, what was his name? Alex Morono should absolutely have been Kyle Noke's fight.
Yeah.
And Kyle Noke is capable, like we've talked about with other fighters on this card, like Rani Yahya. Kyle Noke is capable of losing just about any random fight he's in, and not winning every fight he's in, but winning up to a certain level. I mean, like, Kyle Noke has good, like, decent kickboxing technique. He's got some power. He can be an all-right grappler, but I feel like there's a lot of defensive parts of Kyle Noke's game missing.
Yes.
Especially movement defensively, like on the back foot. He's really not a counter fighter at all. He needs to have the advantage and press it. Now, fortunately for him here, I think he will absolutely have that advantage over Keita Nakamura. So I'm picking Kyle Noke, but this could very well be the thing where Kyle Noke cracks Keita Nakamura, follows him to the ground, and then gets teleported on and subbed out. So I'm picking Kyle Noke. I'm picking him by let's see. Has Keitaro been knocked out? I don't know that he ever has. So I'm not picking him by. He's been knocked out once by some random South Korean dude. But I'm not picking Kyle Noke by knockout, but I'm picking him to take a tough but reasonable decision.
Yeah, it's Kyle Noke is capable of really impressing you and also of really disappointing you. And it seems almost a coin flip sometimes which Noke shows up. His performance against Alex Morono was definitely disappointing. That being said, he probably should have won that fight. In fact, I think he definitely should have won that fight. Morono really did. It was a bad decision. Morono did not do enough damage.
It was a bad decision, but it was also the kind of fight watching it where I'm like, you cannot fight the fight Kyle Noke fought and expect to win.
It was Anthony Pettis, Eddie Alvarez. I thought Pettis won that fight, but when it went against him, I was like, well, I mean, you should have seen that coming, that this kind of fight may very well have not gone your way.
You fight a terrible fight, you get a terrible decision. That's how it is.
Yeah, they basically scored that fight on body language, and Kyle Noke's body language was really bad, and Morono was going for it. So, I think that Noke definitely has the striking advantage here. Like you said, Nakamura is going to let him lead. He's going to stand at a long range that really doesn't suit him. He's going to wait around a lot. Even in the clinch, Nakamura does a lot of waiting. Everything about his game, except for his teleportation on the ground, as you put it, is too patient for his own good. And that has gotten him into trouble in the past.
He's the Sam Alvey of back takes.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's actually a really good way of putting it. And so that makes him dangerous in the same way that Sam Alvey is. Like, Sam Alvey could knock out a top middleweight if they overextended and left their chin out there. But you would definitely expect those kind of guys to beat him. Kyle Noke isn't a top welterweight. He's very inexperienced. I think he is probably hitting the best form of his career. I think he's putting things together now better than he did back in the day. Seems to have put on a little muscle, seems to have capitalized on a lot of the experience that he's gained, and seems to have put a little more pop into his strikes, which is great. But, the pocket boxing, the defense, the footwork, things like that are still kind of shoddy for Noke. I think the only thing that could be a weakness for him here is that his ground game, while not bad, is really basic. But I think all he needs to do is just latch on to Nakamura if he gets taken down and hold him in guard and wait for a stand-up. Like, pray for a stand-up or don't engage in grappling if you can avoid it. And if he can do that, then Nakamura is going to be there to be outstruck. It is almost impossible in my head to imagine Nakamura outstriking Kyle Noke, which probably means that it's definitely going to happen now that I said that. But I have to go with Kyle Noke by decision.
Yeah, it seems like a relatively straightforward pick. Noke is the favorite, -170 to -185. Keita Nakamura, the underdog, +158 to +140. And in the night of skewed odds, those feel exactly right. I do not think that Noke should be a bigger favorite than that, but he should be a definite favorite.
Feels just right. If it was any wider, it would make Keita Nakamura a good bet. So,
exactly. Yeah. Because Keitaro, like we say, I mean, he's got that ability to just like that. Like I say, it's the Sam Alvey thing. You give him that one opening, and suddenly he'll be on your back choking you out. And no matter how the rest of the fight went. Yeah. Well,
look at the Li Jinglong fight. Like, fight was absolutely not in his favor. He gets one moment to hit a switch, and he's instantly within 3 seconds, he went from sprawled on and in a bad position to strangling the life out of Li Jinglong. That's his advantage.
Yep. And Noke could absolutely give him those kinds of opportunities. So
yep.
All right, that brings us to some beef boy heavyweight action. And we got Daniel Omielańczuk versus Oleksiy Oliynyk. And
I think it's me.
Is it you? Yeah, it is you.
I like this fight. I think it could absolutely turn out to be a stinker, but it has good potential to be a fun matchup. Omielańczuk is really good when you give him space and range to strike. He's very dangerous with his kicks, his counter punches. He's even okay in loose clinches and things like that. He's got good knees, good uppercuts, and some nice little tricky things. When he gets held against the fence, he's bad. He dropped a decision to Anthony Hamilton being held against the fence. And Anthony Hamilton is a gamer, but he's not very good. He just doesn't have a lot of skills. He's really, really big dude who will be aggressive, and that's it. And he almost suffered the same fate against Jarvis Donho, like more than he should have. Like a guy who's really, really raw, and Omielańczuk probably would have lost the first round against him if he didn't land one really good shot while creating distance and staggering Donho from the clinch, because he spent about 2 minutes before then with his back pressed against the chain link. So I think Oleksiy Oliynyk, that has to be to his advantage, because Oliynyk will go for the clinches. He's not a great wrestler, but he's a determined one, and he will try to beat you up in the clinch. One of the things that Oliynyk does really, really well is getting head position and then just battering your body with right uppercut after right uppercut after right uppercut, chopping away at your legs with knees. And unlike a lot of the other guys that Omielańczuk has managed to outstrike, Oliynyk is very comfortable in exchanges. He's not a pretty striker, but he will duck his head, move side to side, and swing with both hands. And if you are there to be hit, he's going to hit you. And then you give him the ground game. Oliynyk has a crazy amount of experience on the ground and a crazy amount of submissions. He has 41 submissions in his 60 fights. And Omielańczuk has more submissions than you would expect given his style, but it's mostly like key locks.
Power man subs.
Yeah, exactly. Like key locks and things like that against guys who are not good. So, Oleynyk's record stands a lot more there. The big question here, I would pick Oliynyk in an instant if it weren't for the layoff. Oleynyk's been away since that win over Jared Rochold. I think it was like 16 months ago or something like that. Back in 2014.
Yep.
And he had some knee surgeries. He said he was determined to come back. He just needed to basically treat some old injuries. But the guy's not young. Even for a heavyweight, he's not particularly young. He just had surgery. He's been out for a long time. His amount of experience should make up for that somewhat. The ring rust shouldn't be as bad for a guy who's fought that much. But the question remains. So if Oliynyk looks like his old self, and I'm hoping that he will, I think he beats Omielańczuk. I think he probably puts him in some tough spots, but more likely just holds him against the fence and wins a decision, beating him up in a grindy kind of fight.
Really? That's interesting. Because I would say that unless Oliynyk has changed dramatically, I would not expect for a second this to actually be a boring heavyweight fight. Because Oliynyk, to his credit, is almost never in a really boring heavyweight fight.
I think it'll be a fun kind of grinding. I think it'll be a lot of crazy clinch exchanges.
I expect this seems to me perfectly set up for a scarf hold headlock choke.
I'd love it. The diaphragm compression.
Omielańczuk's takedown defense is not good. He's very willing to be pressed up against the cage. Oleynyk's body lock takedown game is excellent, and he can hit that body lock takedown straight into the submission with almost no effort at all.
That's true.
And this just looks like that kind of win to me for him. It's just another first-round submission, scarf hold, headlock choke. Because Omielańczuk, I think he's been getting better in the cage. Like, the more UFC experience he's getting, he's starting to learn how to actually fight in the UFC. But he's still like a 6 foot, 240-pound heavyweight with a range kickboxing game and not much else. And, Oleynyk's very not good at from range, but he's really, really powerful in the pocket and strong in the clinch. He's got a good body lock takedown, and he's absolutely great from top control. So I think there's just too many things going his way unless the knee surgery is just broke him.
He's only been KO'd 4 times in 60 fights, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. And Omielańczuk's only gotten 3 KOs in 23 fights.
Yeah, so. And they were against dudes like Nandor Guillermino and Chris De La Roca.
Yeah.
So, Oliynyk should have this one going away. He is the favorite, -190 to -220. Omielańczuk, the underdog, +186 down to +155. Those odds are perfect for a heavyweight fight because it's a heavyweight fight. Do not bet on heavyweight fights. We do not actually know what is going to happen. There's every bit of chance that, one of them will step his foot through the cage and break his leg and lose instantly.
I kind of want to see that now.
Yeah, me too. And that brings us to the middleweight division for another key middleweight matchup. Blue collar scrapper versus, is it fair to say low volume puncher? Probably not for Josh. He wouldn't like that.
No. I think Josh doesn't really actually fit very well into the.
No, he doesn't really fit into the archetypes.
The prescribed middleweight dynamics. Josh is like super athletic striker.
Yeah. So That brings us to Tim Boetsch, Josh Samman, and well, I'm just going to say up front for I would pick Josh Samman anyways, but I'm also picking Josh Samman because I'm not about to pick against somebody that I work with.
Well, just full disclosure, like it's kind of impossible to keep a completely clear head when you're picking for a buddy, somebody who both of us work with, somebody who I scouted Tim Boetsch for Josh Samman, so like it's my analysis is almost certainly colored, even though I do feel like I have a good case for Josh winning the fight. It is what it is.
Yeah, we have to put that out up front that neither of us are picking against Josh, and not only is it for technical reasons, but it's for a lot of.
I think the steak is still good, but you're going to want to season it with salt regardless.
Yeah, maybe go find out what Pat Wyman has to say. He's got less of a dog in this hunt.
Sure.
But yeah, Samman, Boetsch, for the first thing, he's won 2 fights since 2012, and it's CB Dalloway and Brad Tavares, and those aren't bad wins. They're not, but considering that he's fought 8 times, winning 2 fights is kind of a problem.
He also should have lost to CB Dalloway.
Yeah, he also probably should have lost to CB Dalloway.
He didn't deserve the nod in that fight, and he
was on his way to losing to Brad Tavares.
Oh yeah.
So the big difference here in the Samman fight, it's actually not much like any of the fights that he's fought so far, except maybe the closest comparison would be Luke Rockhold, and Samman is not Luke Rockhold. We're not going that far.
No.
But in these fights, he's more Luke Rockhold than he is Ed Herman, Dan Henderson, Talis Leites, Mark Munoz, or Costa Philippou.
Yeah, his game is maybe like Ed Herman's, except like he doesn't move like he's literally on 50% speed.
Yeah. So, Samman's got this really athletic, dynamic, multi-piece game, and to his benefit and his Achilles heel, he very much needs to be able to take the fight everywhere to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he cannot stop himself from wrestling and grappling and striking and doing all of these things interchangeably as he feels the need. And so in some fights, like we saw against Tamden McCrory, that can get him in trouble. Against the vast majority of middleweights, however, that tends to be a pretty favorable thing because there are a lot of guys at middleweight who are amazingly one-dimensional. And usually that dimension is not grappling. So going in and saying, okay, I'm going to be willing to go in and grapple with you and wrestle with you and also strike with you, usually gives you consistent advantages in at least one place and allows you to change up the game enough to keep somebody off balance and do your thing and, keep the fight where you want it. That's a lot more like what I see out of this Samman Boetsch fight, is that he can probably, pick Boetsch off from range, and then if he follows that up with well-timed reactive takedowns, put Boetsch on his back and out-grapple him. And now, obviously the biggest question mark would be if he decides to just walk into the pocket and strike with Boetsch there. But that's not something that Samman has tended to do because it's not something he needs to do. He's much more of the throw enough strikes from the outside that you start to question what's coming and then duck in on a long-range shot and work to get that takedown. And he's been dynamic enough more often than not to get those. He even though he ended up getting out grappled by Tamden McCrory, he took him down a lot. Like, his shots were often successful. It was just the follow-up that where he had trouble. And Boetsch, at one point, I had a lot of confidence in Boetsch's redneck judo to kind of stuff takedowns, keep him upright, let him be more of a physical bully, let him do the Dan Kelly thing where he just leans into you with his hips and suddenly the takedown is stopped. Like, Dan Kelly doesn't even sprawl. He just goes from here to there. That little, that to that, and suddenly the takedown is no longer happening. Yeah. So at one point I kind of trusted Boetsch to do that, but it really feels like everything for him is just marching backwards. Like, I feel bad because partially he's been like, oh, I'm way more comfortable now. I'm with like my old coaches, and I can't remember who is it, Marcus Davis. He's been working with a ton, and he's like, oh, this is just the right fit. I feel great. Everything's clicking, and yet you're getting worse. So all those together, I gotta pick Samman by submission. I think that he can make Boetsch overextend himself, just get him frustrated enough at range to make him make mistakes, and then get a reactive takedown, get back control, choke him out. So I'm picking Josh Samman by rear naked choke.
Yeah, Boetsch is, I mean, some of it's just the fact that Boetsch is 35 years old. He's not been in the game as long as you kind of feel like he has. He's only been doing it since 2006, but that's 10 years, and a lot of those have been very tough fights, and a lot of them against light heavyweights, against bigger, more powerful guys. So, he's had a tough time and a tough career, and 28 fights against mostly against elite competition. I think it's just taken its toll on him. When he was with Matt Hume, he would often change things up from one fight to the next, but now with Marcus Davis, he seems content to kind of satisfy his innate urge to counterpunch. I think that's what Boetsch really wants to do, is just wait for you to throw and bomb you with an overhand right cross counter or with an uppercut, and then exchange. And so he kind of, for the past like 5 years, Boetsch has been letting his opponents dictate the pace of the fight. And that is his big weakness here against Josh. I think this is a good opportunity for Josh to work on that problem that you mentioned. I think one of his big difficulties has been just being so willing to engage his opponents wherever, whenever. He goes into all of his fights, I think, with a very clear idea of what kind of game plan he wants to do. Like, I'm sure he went into the Tandem McCrory fight, and I'm sure of this. He went into the Tandem McCrory fight not wanting to grapple with Tandem McCrory, like not wanting to go in there and just swim with Tandem McCrory on the ground, but to use his rangy striking and try to avoid the pocket boxing and all that. And by the third round of that fight, he was all about the grappling. I think Josh is a very tactical guy. When he gets in his head that he's going to go for this thing, like when you set a grappling battle, he's going to set a grappling battle. And so we kind of have two guys who aren't necessarily that capable of imposing their game on their opponent. Josh has the better tools from the range that Tim will accept, but Josh also has the style to sometimes leap into dangerous waters. So it should be a good chance for Josh, who is still young, still developing, to work on that against a slowing down version of Tim Boetsch. But Boetsch remains very dangerous. He's still very powerful. Two of his recent wins have been really remarkable comebacks, so we know he's capable of that still. But also his most recent two losses were both knockouts. And so we know that his durability is fading as well. And I think that gives an extra edge to Josh. And Josh is also probably one of the best clinch fighters Boetsch has fought in some time. Another comparison to Ed Herman there. Boetsch often can have an opening in the clinch to work somebody, but his clinch game isn't really nuanced. It's like he's going to grab your head and bomb you with right hands, and he's strong and powerful, so it works. But if you break Boetsch's posture or hold him tight, he doesn't really get much work done. And I think Josh is actually going to be one of the few guys capable of playing a controlling clinch game and doing damage to Boetsch in that range, which should help him if he does kind of leap into those choppy waters a couple times, because he does have edges over Boetsch in some of his strong areas that other opponents don't. So I like Josh. I'm taking Josh by decision. A knockout wouldn't surprise me. Hopefully we get to see him improve some of those things that have troubled him, because it's a good fight. It's a tough matchup against a guy who is beatable, fading, but always dangerous.
I'm glad to see Josh staying up with the seasoned veterans of the division and not sliding back to fighting some really dangerous newcomer nobody knows.
Yeah, for sure.
Because these are much better opportunities for him to get known, for people to be like, oh yeah, I saw you beat Tim Boetsch.
And as a fighter, they're development fights. Like you get to go in there against a guy like Boetsch. You know what he offers. You've seen all of his footage. You have like 15 UFC fights to look at for Tim Boetsch. if not more. So you know what he offers, you know what you can afford to work on and what you can't afford to mess up. Gives you a chance. It's an experience building experience, if that makes sense.
Yes. All right. Samman is the favorite, -204 to -225 or 240 rather. Tim Boetsch is the underdog, +195 down to +175, and that's a little narrow to me. I mean, maybe this is my partiality speaking, but I would actually like to see Boetsch win a fight recently before I pick him to win it. Like, he's still dangerous, but it's been so long since I've seen, like it just a guy who's losing as regularly as he is. It's hard to then be like, no, he has a good chance. Sure, I mean, his last one was 2014, and it was that comeback KO over Brad Tavares
in a fight he was losing. Yeah, I mean, without that, like without the comeback knockout and without the gift decision over CB Dalloway, Tim Boetsch would be winless.
His last solid win, his last solid, uncontested, unweird, funky win would be a 2011 win over Nick Ring.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the Yushin Okami win, because we already took the Brad Tavares win out of the equation. But yeah, basically it's
a huge comeback.
It's remarkable comebacks or controversial wins all the way back to 2011. And I actually kind of recall that fight being a little controversial as well. Like, if Boetsch can't knock you out, the fights tend to be dominant losses or like very, very contentious wins.
And Josh has not been knocked out today. Oh, well, was he knocked out on Tough?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay. Yeah,
did he fight Uriah Hall?
No, he fought. I think he fought. Oh, I think he was knocked out on Tough because he fought the Swedish guy.
He fought Tor Troing in the UFC and knocked him out.
Yeah, but I think he fought him on Tough too and lost. I want to say.
See, oh no, he got submitted by Kelvin Gastelum. He beat everyone else he fought on Tough.
Okay, that's right. He got submitted by Kelvin Gastelum. I'm misremembering his Tough career.
Yeah, he beat Tor Troing in the house as well.
Okay, so he's never been knocked out. So I'm not picking him to get knocked out, at which point I think the odds of him losing to Tim Boetsch are probably quite a bit longer than ±200,
Yeah, I mean, I get the odds. It's Tim Boetsch. He's dangerous. We know how risky it is to fight him. But I'm kind of with you.
I would if it was up around 300. I would say that would be closer to right. Anyway, that brings us to the co-main event: Tony Ferguson versus Landon Vannata. You have 2 minutes to spend on this fight. If you need more than that.
Landon Vannata is a prospect of some note, not a ton. He has potential. He's powerful. He's a good wrestler. He trains out of a good camp. He is a featherweight who is not ready for Tony Ferguson on short notice. Tony Ferguson, too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous in every single phase. It's Tony Ferguson all the way. It really is a question of knockout or submission. I'm going to go with TKO in the first round.
I'm going with sub just because I think Vannata is young enough and early enough in his career that his chin will hold up even if he takes some real damage, and submission feels more likely. His wrestling game and grappling game on the regional circuit actually look pretty funky to me. Like, the much better part of Landon Vannata game that I've seen is honestly his range striking and boxing. Yeah, he really has a nice
not funky in the Tony Ferguson sense, you mean?
Yeah, I mean funky in that they don't really he never hits takedowns. He only gets top position on the ground when he's sprawling on somebody or defending a shot. And I've never seen him really consistently control someone there for a submission. So he's mostly just been a kickboxer in his regional career, and he's become a pretty solid, slick, fun one. But I think Ferguson will hurt him, and once he does, choke him out. So Tony Ferguson by submission. And I like Landon Vannata. I'm really excited to see him fight further in the UFC. But there's not one regional lightweight in the world I think you could sign to fight Tony Ferguson on short notice and give them a good chance of winning.
No. It's too hard of a fight for short notice. Like, that is just a nightmare opponent without an entire camp with which to prepare.
And without a ton of seasoned experience. Like,
yeah,
you really, like, it's not even just prep. It's you actually have to have been in a bunch of fights and know how to get through all of these different situations.
Like Edson Barboza was not good enough to be a range kickboxer and beat Tony Ferguson, and that was just before he put on a masterclass against Anthony Pettis. You have that; It's just not happening.
So Ferguson is the favorite, minus 650 to minus 800. Landon Vannata plus 567 to plus 415. I'm fine with that. Like I say, I think it'd be more or less the same for anyone you brought in on short notice for this fight.
Yep.
And that brings us to the main event, Michael McDonald versus John Lineker. This is an awesome, awesome fight. I'm super pumped for it. And I think that John Lineker is going to beat seven shades of shit out of Michael McDonald.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of pumped for that too. Not because I dislike Michael McDonald, but I really dislike fighters like Michael McDonald who get wins without ever really developing a style that's made to get wins.
Yep.
I mean, McDonald was getting worked by Masanori Kanehara before he subbed him out. Like, just straight beat. Not really any question about it. No two ways about it. Just beat. And that's his only fight since 2013 when he lost to Uriah Faber. I don't like Lineker has his flaws, but they're not that he tends to beat himself.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Michael McDonald he's John Dodson, like different skill set, different style, but all dynamic, no process. And unlike John Dodson, he trains out of like a completely unremarkable gym with his brother, I think, as his main training partner. Like there's just not a lot of room. The pieces are not in place for Michael McDonald to improve and prepare for each fight the way John Dodson does.
With Lineker's thing is, if you're a good enough counter puncher to scare him off and a good enough wrestler to take him down and to stay on top of him, you can beat him. Michael McDonald is not these things. Michael McDonald is a decent leading boxer with real power, like real fight-ending power when he's leading. He's an okay counter threat, but he's not known as like an amazing counter threat. He's not a good wrestler at all. And he's a positionally opportunistic grappler who, if you give him the right opening, will absolutely make something of it. And it just seems like exactly the right fight for Lineker to just march him into the fence over and over again, pick his shots, and beat him. Lineker's not going to shoot for takedowns on him. Lineker's not going to like mess around and leave some opening. Michael McDonald's either going to have to catch him with a huge, powerful counter, which Lineker's going to be watching for, or he's going to lose. Like, that's just kind of how I see this fight going.
Yeah. I got to quibble with one thing that you said, which is that you have to scare John Lineker off. I truly don't know if John Lineker can be scared off. Like, he's a fearless kind of fighter. I think he can probably be frustrated. And we've seen that happen like in the Bagotinov fight. But really, I think, if anything, his fights with Francisco Rivera and Rob Font and Ian McCall, like, you can't bluff John Lineker or scare him with your punching power. I
scare him. It's that you have to make him think enough that he's not just going to swarm the shit out of you.
Yes,
you have to make him. You have to make him try to figure out where your counters are coming from long enough that you can catch him off guard and hit a takedown.
You got to fight the kind of fight Rob Font tried to fight, but way better than Rob Font did it. And that's the thing. Like, if John Lineker is not scared of you, and if you're a person, you're probably going to end up scared of John Lineker at some point. He basically, if he can get his hands on you, if he can land even on your arms or anything, if he can make contact, then he is going to feel comfortable setting his feet and letting his hands go. And I think, even though it was very frustrating to watch him fail the flyweight limit over and over, I think the move to bantamweight is really good for him. He's a small bantamweight, but I think he still looks strong. and he no longer seems to worry about his stamina. He fights at a crazy pace, doesn't have to hold back. I have some numbers here. Let's see. He threw 132 punches in 15 minutes with Ian McCall, which is a lot. But that was at flyweight, and he missed the limit. Against Francisco Rivera, he had only 2 minutes, and he threw just about half that, 64, in just 2 minutes. And in his 15-minute fight with the very mobile Rob Font at bantamweight, he threw 200. So I think John Lineker is just going to turn into more of an aggressive volume striker. And I don't think, like, at flyweight, he wasn't a massive puncher, really. It's that he commits and he keeps hitting you and sets you up for shots. He hits you clean. He fully commits when he throws, and he keeps coming. He's this attritive whirlwind of punches. That's his real edge. That doesn't go away at bantamweight. If anything, it's probably helped by the fact that he's now a little more mobile and speedier in comparison to his competition, because a lot of the flyweights could outmaneuver him. And Michael McDonald is not going to do that. So I think he swarms Michael McDonald. I think he probably eats some punches, but I think Michael McDonald eats more, and John Lineker knocks him out. I picked 4th round TKO for some reason in my Sherdog preview. Kind of seems like it should happen earlier than that now that I've talked through it, but I do think it'll be a TKO or a KO win nonetheless.
Yeah, I would pick probably second. You know, I don't think that. I think that he'll pile up enough damage by that point to get it. So, I mean, the big things in McDonald's favor are that he's got a great chin and he is really fast. Like, he's a great athlete.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, it's to the point where, does it seem crazy to you that Michael McDonald fought for the title in this division?
Yeah.
He fought Renan Barão for the interim belt. Like, he's just not that class of fighter. Just in terms of,
he's still ranked as high as he is off a win over Masanori Kanehara, where he looked like terrible.
Yeah. Do you want to hear my amazing line? I'm just going to read from my Sherdog preview because this is beautiful and I'm so proud of it. He was stifled by Kanehara before pulling out a stunning rear naked choke. The result hinted that, like his number 5 UFC ranking, McDonald's MMA game might be a relic of the past. What do you think about that, Zane?
Oh snap! Oh snap! That's that's not even shade. That's just,
it feels pretty lame now. The burns of MMA writers are truly not to be feared.
Yeah. All right. On that note, it's time to close the show. We got any like, there's some weird odds here. The Pfister Holtzman fight feels off. The Yahya Lopez fight feels a little off. The Smolka Nguyen fight, maybe.
I think Smolka's worth an underdog bet. I think Katlyn Chookagian is worth a small underdog bet. I think Alex Nicholson is worth an underdog bet at plus 200 in that area. I think he's definitely worth a little bit of money. Very small, but he's always got that chance. And I think John Lineker is the best favorite bet on the card at like minus 160 or so. I think
that does seem right. The thing I would say, though, is that for a lot of these fights, we're talking small here, because there are a lot of messy fights with low level, low technique fighters that we're looking for growth and change, and a lot of different variables that could come out and come into play in these fights that are really hard to predict. So, like, I'm seeing a lot of fights on this card where it's like the odds feel wrong, but the fight feels super unpredictable.
Yes.
So, that's worth noting, is that this is more about, can I take small advantage of some weird odds than, I see this lock that they've got just, way on the wrong side of the odds equation for a great bet. Anyway, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheseAnytime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. You can find both of us over at Bloody Elbow. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like. That's a thumbs up. Over on YouTube, MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM is our YouTube channel. Subscribe. That way you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, analysis. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.